Now it's time to update the Appetizers app for iOS 15. And because this app was much bigger than our previous apps, this is going to be broken down into, I'm not sure exactly how, but 5-6 videos. So the source code for all the updates is going to be attached to the end of the last video, just as a heads up. But I definitely wanted to break this up into a bunch of different videos so it wasn't one marathon video. So to kick that off, I'm going to start with how I actually update an app when a new iOS 15 version comes out. So the first thing I do is I open up the app and I want to run it on iOS 15 to see if there's any errors or warnings in my code, see if the UI is acting weird anywhere. And then I fix all that stuff, just get it running in iOS 15, and then you start adding the new stuff and refactoring the code, all that stuff. So this video is going to be the initial run of the app and see how bad iOS 15 messed up our app. So first things first in Appetizers, and by the way, this code I'm starting with is the last source code on the last video when we finished the iOS 14 version of the Appetizer. So this is the source code from right before the iOS 15 updates. So click on the Appetizers app, hit the Appetizers project. Again, iOS deployment target, make that iOS 15. And then in the project, iOS 15. And then while we're here, not iPad, not landscape left, not landscape right. Maybe you've played around with that. Looks like crap on the iPad, looks like crap in landscape. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this course, but if you want to, take these projects and run with them, maybe getting it working in landscape is a good project. Maybe getting it working on the iPad is a good project as well, but we're not going to mess with that. Okay, so now that we've done that, I do a Command B to see if there's any errors or warnings. See, I got build succeeded, no errors, no warnings. Now, that in a bigger, like quote unquote real app, that is going to be pretty rare. The reason we don't have any warnings is because this app already had a minimum target of iOS 14, so it's not like it was an older app. If you've been working on an app for years, maybe since iOS 11, iOS 10, you're going to have older code that the deprecations are slowly going to catch up with you, and it's going to be a bigger code base. So I just want to set those expectations when you're in the real world that anytime a new iOS version comes out, if you're working on an app that's been around for a little bit, you're going to see a ton of warnings and errors that you have to fix. We don't have to do that because this is a relatively simple and new app. But again, going through my process, cool, no errors, no warnings. Let's run it on the simulator and see if the UI is messed up at all. Okay, here I'll go back to light mode. You can see our table view, or list, got inset by default. That must be the new default in iOS 15. Now, if you want that, you like that look, cool. You don't have to do anything. I'm gonna go back to the look that we had before, which if I, let's practice adding something to order. Add to order, cool. Now if I go to order, you can see this list style. I just like the way that looks better in this circumstance. So it's fine on our orders, but on our home screen, it's not fine. So, okay, we're gonna have to fix that. And obviously adding to an order worked. Account, everything looks, good there. I always test, let's add an account, Sean Allen, me at email.com. Birthday, cool. It's not my birthday, obviously. Napkins, save changes, profile saved. Okay, that seems to be working. So like I said, I just run through the functionality of the app, make sure things are working fine. So that account should persist, right? So I'm gonna stop running it again just to make sure my persistence is still working. My account still shows up. Cool. Okay, so the app seems to be working. The only issue we have here is this list inset that's on by default. So let's fix that real quick. So we'll stop running that, get rid of that, go to Appetizer list view. Hit resume here. I think we just see the loading screen here. But here's our list on the Appetizer list view. So in order to get that plain list style, a modifier on list, which here's our list, we can do this. We'll do it below the navigation title. We can do dot list style. You can see we do dot grouped, inset grouped, plain, sidebar. I believe grouped is what they have. That's the default. But I want to do plain, right? That'll give me back my plain list. So if I run it again, we should see this. Yep, there's our list looking like it used to. Okay, cool. So that's fixed. The next step I do is go through known deprecations. If you watch the weather app update, I talked about deprecations. I'll give a quick 20-second review, but deprecations are, when Apple decides to change SwiftUI and the syntax and the way they do things. So they'll deprecate the old code, which means it's no longer going to work at some point in the future, and they'll give you a new way to do it. Now, luckily, they usually give you a couple years to do it, right? They'll first tell you it's been deprecated, deprecated. Then maybe a year later, they'll start putting up warnings in your Xcode. And then maybe a year later, they'll like make it not work anymore. So you have plenty of time. And like I said before, how do I know about these deprecations? You can look at the Xcode beta release notes. So during the whole beta period of Xcode from June till September, you can follow the release notes to see what's been deprecated. But it's usually a lot. It's a lot to keep track of. People are talking about them on Twitter. Usually during that time period, I'm like making a list of what's been deprecated. And then when I go to update my project, I go through that list and I search for that stuff. For example, like we talked about before, I know edges ignoring safe area was deprecated. So I typed in edges. Okay, cool. So let's go to this edges ignoring safe area. I know that is now .ignore safe area. And then the next place I'm using it is down here. Cool. So like I said, part of the process, I go through and try to fix all the deprecations that I know of. And I say that because it's not the end of the world if you let some slip through. Like I said, that edges ignoring safe area was actually deprecated in iOS 14, and I missed it for this course. Not a big deal. You see the app still worked fine. It still worked. Like I said, Apple gives you a couple years. They don't just change the code on you and break it right away. Sometimes. But that was one of them. Another one I know of was accent color. Now, what accent color am I talking about here? So let's go to our appetizer tab view. This accent color, which was, the brand primary, which is what makes our tab view at the bottom of the tabs, that color. Cool. Xcode does not like this part. Okay, so you can't see the preview of the tab, but the tab colors are our brand primary. Xcode crashes, gotta love it, right? Anyway, this accent color has now been deprecated. And if you option click on it, you can go to the documentation and you can see deprecated over here on the right. So the new way to do this is if you go into assets, you can see accent color here is now moved into the assets, and you would create something just like you did brand primary for accent color. So let's create that. So I'm gonna click on brand primary, open up the right pane here, click on the color, and you can see here's the 8-bit hexadecimal. You see content sRGB. So I'm just gonna copy that hex and then go to accent color, universal, make sure you do appearances, any dark. So for any appearance, again, the color, we did sRGB, and then we did 8-bit hexadecimal, and then paste that into there. And then we'll do the same thing with brand primary in the dark. There might be a quicker way to do this. I'm happy to hear it. And then for dark, you can see we're doing display P3. Let's go back to sRGB, and then let's go to 8-bit hexadecimal, and you can see here's the 8-bit hexadecimal. Copy that, go to accent color, in dark, again, content, sRGB, not floating point. We want to do 8-bit hexadecimal, and then we'll paste in that hex code, hit return. See, we get the same color. So now that's the accent color for our app. So we no longer have that in our tab view. So if I delete this code, the Xcode crash, it doesn't like this preview. I'm getting rid of this preview. Brand new Xcode 13, you're going to have issues here. Okay, so we'll delete that accent color, now run it on the simulator, and we should see our tab view still working as expected, but we just deleted that code accent color. Yeah, so you see our bottom tab, we have that dark green. If I do Command-Shift-A for dark mode, you can see we get that brighter green down here on the tab. So cool, that is still working, accent color. Again, minor language deprecations you're going to see, especially early in SwiftUI. As SwiftUI matures, you're going to see these deprecations less and less. But in the early days of SwiftUI, this is kind of the norm every time a new iOS comes out. So always look for deprecations. That's another phase of the initial getting the app running in iOS 15. So now that we have no warnings or errors in our code, we fixed deprecations, we fixed any iOS 15 UI bugs. Now it's time to actually start adding the new stuff. All right, let's go.